The crimson skies of Kepler 442b's largest moon burned like a hellish canvas above the battlefield, alien artillery fire streaking through the atmosphere in brilliant arcs of destruction. Darius Kane adjusted his grip on his plasma rifle as he crouched behind the twisted wreckage of a transport vessel, the mechanical wings folded against his back humming with barely contained energy. Through his tactical visor, he could see the life sign flickering in the distance, a single, weak signal emanating from a crashed vessel approximately 300 meters across the scorched landscape. The ship lay on its side like a wounded beast, smoke pouring from multiple hull breaches as enemy fire continued to rain down around it. Negative on rescue attempts, Kane. Captain Torres's voice crackled through his comm unit, distorted by the electromagnetic interference from the ongoing bombardment. The Xantharian forces are converging on that sector. Fall back to secondary positions immediately. Darius pressed himself deeper into cover as another explosion rocked the battlefield, the heat washing over his armor in waves. The wings on his back were works of art as much as they were weapons, sleek appendages of polished titanium and biosynthetic muscle that marked him as one of the elite few accepted into the Skyward Corps. Only 12 humans had ever earned the right to wear them, and fewer still had survived long enough to master their use. "Copy that, Control," he replied, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. "But I'm reading a survivor signature. Someone's still alive in there." "Not our problem, soldier. The Xantharians can handle their own casualties. Your orders are to withdraw." Darius watched as another blast tore through the downed ship's hull, the life sign growing weaker with each passing second. He thought of the oath he'd taken when they'd grafted the wings to his nervous system, the words they'd made him repeat in the sterile medical bay, to protect those who cannot protect themselves, regardless of species or allegiance. "With respect, sir," he said, already moving toward the edge of his cover, "I can't do that." He switched off his comm before Torres could respond, feeling the familiar thrill as his wings unfolded to their full 12-foot span. The energy cells that powered them glowed brilliant blue in the reflected firelight, and he felt the surge of power as they lifted him into the war-torn sky. The battlefield became a blur of motion beneath him as he streaked toward the crashed vessel, weaving between streams of enemy fire with practiced grace. His wings adjusted automatically to the wind currents and pressure changes, the biosynthetic muscles responding to his thoughts as naturally as his own limbs. This was what he'd been born for, this moment of perfect harmony between man and machine, earth and sky. He landed hard beside the wreckage, his boots cracking the moon's dusty surface as he absorbed the impact. The transport was even more damaged than it had appeared from a distance, its entire rear section vaporized by what must have been a direct hit from heavy artillery. The smell of burning metal and something else, something organic, filled his nostrils as he forced open what remained of the main hatch. Inside the darkened hull, he found her. She was pinned beneath a collapsed support beam, her exotic beauty immediately striking even in the dim emergency lighting. Her skin was a deep violet that seemed to shimmer with an inner light, marked with intricate silver patterns that looked almost like circuitry running along her arms and neck. Her hair was pure white, so pale it was almost translucent, and her eyes, when they opened to look at him, were the color of molten amber. "Human?" she gasped, her voice melodic despite her obvious pain. Her universal translator converted the word from her native tongue, though he could hear the musical quality of her original language underneath. "Darius Kane, Skyward Corps," he said, kneeling beside her to assess the situation. "Let's get you out of here." The beam across her legs was heavy, but his armor's strength augmentation made it manageable. As he lifted it, she pulled herself free with a grace that spoke of trained muscles and disciplined movement. Her clothing, what remained of it, was form-fitting and clearly military in design, though unlike anything in the human or Xantharian arsenals. "Can you walk?" he asked, offering her his hand. She tried to stand but collapsed immediately, a soft cry escaping her lips. Her left leg was clearly injured, though how badly he couldn't tell in the poor light. "Then we fly," Darius said simply, scooping her into his arms. She was lighter than he'd expected despite being nearly as tall as he was, her body warm against his armor. As his wings extended again, she stared at them with something like wonder, her amber eyes wide with fascination. "Hold tight," he instructed, and she wrapped her arms around his neck, her face so close to his that he could feel her breath against his skin through his helmet's ventilation system. They burst from the transport just as another artillery shell obliterated what remained of the vessel, the explosion's shockwave propelling them higher and faster than Darius had intended. He banked hard, using the momentum to gain altitude while enemy tracers streaked past them in deadly light shows. "My name is Zara," she said suddenly, her voice barely audible over the wind and distant explosions. "Zara Nethys." "Nice to meet you, Zara," Darius replied, managing a grin despite their circumstances. "Though I wish it were under better conditions." As they soared higher, breaking through the smoke layer into cleaner air, his comm system crackled back to life. "Kane. What the hell do you think you're doing?" Captain Torres's voice was furious, barely controlled. "Saving a life, sir," Darius replied calmly, his wings adjusting to carry them both toward the human base camp. "You've directly violated Xantharian command protocols and ignored direct orders. Return to base immediately for disciplinary action." Darius glanced down at the woman in his arms, at Zara. Her amber eyes met his, and he saw gratitude there, but also something else. Concern, perhaps. Or recognition of what this moment would cost him. "You'll be court-martialed for this," she said softly, her accented voice full of regret. "They'll take your wings." He was surprised she understood what that meant. The wings weren't just equipment, they were a symbol of belonging to the most elite fighting force in human space. They were his identity, his purpose, everything he'd worked toward since he was old enough to dream of flight. "Some things are worth the sacrifice," he said simply, and felt her arms tighten around him. As they approached the base, a formation of security vessels moved to intercept them. Darius knew what awaited him: disgrace, punishment, the loss of everything that defined him. But as Zara's warm breath tickled his neck and her heartbeat pressed against his chest, he found he couldn't regret his choice. Sometimes doing the right thing meant breaking all the rules. The detention cell was smaller than Darius had expected, barely large enough for the narrow bunk and basic sanitation unit. The walls were constructed from the same gray composite material used throughout the base, their surface broken only by a single small window that looked out onto the landing pads where transport ships came and went with mechanical regularity. He'd been stripped of his armor and wings 3 hours ago, the medical technicians removing the neural interfaces with the cold efficiency of surgeons. The phantom sensation still lingered, his brain expecting to feel the familiar weight and power of the wings that were no longer there. It was like losing limbs, he thought. Worse, perhaps, because limbs were something you were born with. The wings had been earned. The tribunal would convene tomorrow morning. He knew the outcome already: expulsion from the Skyward Corps, loss of rank, deportation back to Earth. 12 years of service, gone in a moment of conscience. The cell door's electronic lock chimed, and Darius looked up to see Zara Nethys enter. She moved with less of a limp now, though he could see she still favored her injured leg. She'd changed into clean clothes, a simple but elegant outfit that complemented her violet skin and silver markings. In her hands, she carried a small package wrapped in what looked like traditional Xantharian cloth. "I brought you something to eat," she said, settling gracefully onto the bench beside his bunk. "The base rations here are adequate, but I thought you might appreciate something with more flavor." Darius accepted the package gratefully, unwrapping it to reveal an assortment of foods he didn't recognize but that smelled incredible. "Thank you. You didn't have to." "Yes, I did." Her amber eyes were serious as they met his. "You sacrificed everything for me, Darius Kane. The least I can do is ensure you don't starve before your tribunal." They ate in comfortable silence for a while, the exotic spices warming him in ways the standard-issue jumpsuit couldn't. Through the small window, he could see the base's activity continuing as normal, personnel going about their duties, ships launching and landing, the war continuing without him. "Tell me about the wings," Zara said suddenly. "What was it like?" Darius paused, a piece of what might have been fruit halfway to his mouth. Like being fully alive for the first time, he said finally. Like every dream of flight you had as a child, but real. The connection between mind and machine was so complete that the wings felt like part of my body. When I was in the air, I wasn't Darius Kane the soldier, I was something more. Something better. And now? He shrugged, though the gesture felt hollow. Now I'm just a man who made an expensive choice. Zara moved closer to him on the bench, close enough that he could smell the subtle perfume she wore, something floral but exotic, unlike anything from Earth. Do you regret it? No. The answer came without hesitation, surprising him with its certainty. I couldn't live with myself if I'd left you to die just to follow orders. Her hand found his, her skin warm and smooth against his palm. The silver markings on her arm seemed to pulse faintly in the cell's dim lighting, and he wondered if they were more than decorative. There's something I need to tell you, she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. About who I am. About why that transport was attacked. Darius felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cell's temperature. What do you mean? I'm not just a random survivor, Darius. I'm an intelligence operative, and I was carrying information that certain people would kill to keep secret. Her amber eyes searched his face. By saving me, you've made yourself a target too. Before he could respond, the lights in the corridor outside his cell flickered and went out. Emergency lighting kicked in a moment later, bathing everything in red. Then came the sound he'd hoped never to hear, the distinctive whine of plasma weapons charging. Zara was already moving, producing a small device from somewhere in her clothing. They found us faster than I expected, she said grimly. How much do you trust me, Darius Kane? The sound of approaching footsteps echoed down the corridor, too many footsteps, moving with tactical precision. With my life, he said without thinking, and realized he meant it completely. She smiled then, the expression transforming her face with its radiance. Good. Because we're about to test that trust. The cell door exploded inward in a shower of sparks and molten metal. The explosion that tore through Darius's cell door sent shockwaves through the detention block, emergency klaxons wailing as smoke filled the narrow corridor. 3 figures in black tactical armor stormed through the breach, their faces hidden behind polarized visors, weapons trained on the cell's occupants. Zara moved with fluid grace that spoke of extensive combat training, the small device in her hand expanding into something that looked like a cross between a pistol and a crystalline sculpture. Energy crackled along its surface as she fired, the beam striking the lead attacker and sending him crashing into the opposite wall. Move, she shouted, grabbing Darius's arm and pulling him toward the gaping hole where his cell door had been. They ran through corridors filled with chaos, emergency lights strobing, personnel shouting conflicting orders, the sound of distant weapons fire echoing through the base's ventilation systems. Darius felt naked without his armor and wings, reduced to the baseline human he'd been before the core transformed him into something more. This way, Zara said, leading him down a maintenance corridor he hadn't known existed. Her injured leg seemed forgotten now, adrenaline overriding pain as they navigated the maze of service tunnels. Who were those people? Darius asked, breathing hard as they paused at a junction. Assassins. Probably working for Regent Thane Karith, though proving it will be another matter entirely. She checked her weapon's energy level with practiced efficiency. The information I was carrying when you found me, it detailed weapons shipments to rebel factions, transfers that could only have been authorized at the highest levels of the Xantharian government. They emerged from the maintenance tunnels into what appeared to be a storage bay, crates of supplies stacked to the ceiling creating a maze of hiding spots. Zara moved with the confidence of someone who'd memorized the base's layout, leading him toward what looked like a service entrance. Wait, Darius stopped, his hand catching her arm. If what you're saying is true, then half the command structure could be compromised. We need to get word to someone trustworthy. Like who? Zara's amber eyes were hard in the emergency lighting. You're Captain Torres. The one who ordered you to abandon me to die. Before Darius could respond, the storage bay's main entrance hissed open, and a familiar figure stepped through. Captain Mira Voss moved with the predatory grace that had first attracted him 3 years ago, her dark hair pulled back in the severe bun required by regulations, her brown eyes scanning the room with tactical precision. "Stand down," she called out, her sidearm drawn but not yet aimed. "Both of you." Darius felt his heart clench at the sight of her. Mira had been more than his superior officer once, she'd been his lover, his confidant, the woman he'd thought he might spend his life with before duty and regulations had driven them apart. "Hello, Mira," he said quietly. "Hello, Darius." Her voice was carefully neutral, professional. "You've caused quite a stir. Half the base is looking for you too." "Because someone wants us dead," Zara interjected, her weapon still ready. "The same someone who arranged for my transport to be shot down." Myra's eyes flicked to the alien woman, taking in her exotic beauty with an expression Darius couldn't quite read. "Ms. Nephis, I presume. Intelligence officer, according to your service record. Though there seem to be some interesting gaps in your file." "Captain Voss." Zara inclined her head slightly. "I assume you're here to arrest us." That was the plan. Myra's weapon lowered slightly. "But the attack on the detention block has changed things. Someone with high-level access codes orchestrated this. Someone who wanted you both dead before you could reach your tribunal." Darius stepped forward. "Mira, whatever's happening here, it's bigger than a disciplinary action. Zara has evidence of corruption that reaches into the Xantharian High Command. Evidence that's currently locked in an encrypted data core implanted in my spine," Zara added, her hand moving to touch the base of her neck where Darius now noticed a small, almost invisible scar. "Which is why they can't simply kill me from a distance. They need to extract it first." Mira holstered her weapon entirely, her expression shifting from official to personal. "Show me." The next hour passed in a blur of technical readouts and classified intelligence files. They'd found a secure conference room deep in the base's administrative section, Mira using her command codes to lock down the area and scramble any surveillance equipment. The evidence Zara presented was damning: shipping manifests, communication logs, financial transfers that painted a picture of systematic corruption spanning both human and Xantharian space. "This is extensive," Mira said, scrolling through another batch of files on her tablet. "If even half of this is accurate, it represents a conspiracy that could destabilize the entire alliance." "It's all accurate," Zara replied, though Darius noticed she seemed tired now, the adrenaline finally wearing off. "I spent 8 months infiltrating Regent Caritha's inner circle, gathering evidence of his weapon sales to both sides of various conflicts. He's been playing multiple factions against each other, profiting from the chaos." Darius found himself studying Zara's profile as she spoke, noting the way the emergency lighting cast shadows across her violet skin, highlighting the silver markings that seemed to pulse with their own rhythm. Even exhausted and injured, she was breathtaking. "There's something else," Mira said suddenly, her voice careful. "Something you both need to know. The order to abandon rescue operations wasn't standard protocol. It came directly from Admiral Hayes, marked with Xantharian government priority codes." "Hayes?" Darius felt cold. Admiral Hayes was the human liaison to the Xantharian military, one of the architects of the alliance that had allowed humans to serve in integrated units. He's been in his position for over a decade. Which would give him ample opportunity to develop relationships with certain Xantharian officials, Mira said diplomatically. Zara's expression had grown grim. "If Hayes is involved, then we can't trust anyone in the official command structure. They'll keep trying to eliminate us until they succeed." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Darius looked between the two women who had shaped his life in such different ways, Mira, representing duty and the path he'd chosen, and Zara, representing something new and dangerous and impossibly compelling. "We need to get off this base," he said finally. "All of us." Mira shook her head. "I can't just abandon my post, Darius. I have responsibilities." "Your responsibility is to the truth," Zara interrupted. And the truth is that staying here will get us all killed. As if summoned by her words, the conference room's door chimed with an incoming priority override. Myra's face went pale as she checked her command tablet. "It's Admiral Hayes," she whispered. "He's en route to the base with a full security detail. ETA 20 minutes. Darius felt Zara's hand slip into his, her fingers intertwining with his own. The touch sent warmth up his arm despite the cold fear settling in his stomach. "Then we leave now," he said, squeezing her hand gently. "All of us." Mira looked at their joined hands, something flickering across her face, pain, perhaps, or recognition of what she'd lost when duty had come between them. When she spoke, her voice was steady but sad. "I know a way off the base. A cargo transport leaves for the outer colonies in 15 minutes. If we're quick." The lights went out. Emergency power kicked in a second later, bathing them in red as the base's defensive systems activated. Through the conference room's small window, Darius could see ships landing on the main pad, sleek, black vessels that didn't match any design in the standard fleet registry. Too late, Zara breathed, her weapon appearing in her free hand as if by magic. "They're here." The sound of boots in the corridor outside grew louder, accompanied by the distinctive hum of military-grade weapons powering up. Darius squeezed Zara's hand once more, drawing strength from her presence. "Then we fight our way out," he said, surprising himself with the conviction in his voice. Mira moved to the room's other entrance, her own weapon ready. "Like old times, Darius." "Like old times," he agreed, though they all knew nothing would ever be the same again. The door exploded inward, and the shadows came pouring through. In the chaos that followed, as plasma bolts lit up the conference room like deadly fireworks, Darius felt something shift inside him. Without his wings, without his armor, without the identity that had defined him for so long, he was discovering who he really was beneath it all. And that person was willing to fight, and die, if necessary, for the woman whose hand remained firmly clasped in his own, even as the world erupted into violence around them. Some transformations, he realized, required you to fall before you could truly learn to fly. The cargo freighter Distant Hope shuddered as it broke through the atmosphere of Kepler 442b's moon, its hull scarred from the firefight that had allowed their escape. Darius pressed his back against the cold metal wall of the ship's cramped passenger compartment, his arm around Zara as she tended to a plasma burn on Myra's shoulder. They'd made it out alive, but barely. The image of Admiral Hayes's face, cold and calculating as he'd ordered their execution, was burned into Darius's memory. 3 people who'd served with distinction, marked for death because they'd stumbled onto the truth. "Where are we headed?" Mira asked through gritted teeth as Zara applied a medical patch to her wound. "Nexus Station," their pilot called from the cockpit. Jax Rourke was an old friend of Darius's from their academy days, a man who'd chosen the merchant marine over military service and had never regretted it. "Best place in the outer colonies to disappear if you need to lay low." Zara finished treating Myra's injury and settled back beside Darius, her violet skin pale with exhaustion. The adrenaline that had carried them through their escape was finally wearing off, leaving them all drained and shaken. "I'm sorry," she said quietly, her amber eyes meeting his. "If I hadn't been carrying that data, none of this would have happened. You'd still have your wings, your career." Darius turned to face her fully, his hand cupping her cheek. The silver markings along her neck seemed to pulse more rapidly when she was emotional, he'd noticed. "Don't. I made my choice, and I'd make it again. Even knowing what it would cost you. Especially knowing what it would cost me." His thumb traced one of the silver patterns on her cheekbone. "Some things are worth more than rank or status." Across from them, Mira watched this exchange with an expression that mixed pain with something that might have been acceptance. She'd loved Darius once, but duty had always come between them. Now she could see that what he felt for Zara was different, deeper, more primal, uncomplicated by regulations or hierarchies. "You should get some rest," Mira said to Zara, her voice carefully neutral. "We'll be traveling for 8 hours, and you'll need your strength for whatever comes next." Zara nodded gratefully, curling against Darius's side as the ship's engine settled into a steady rhythm. Within minutes, she was asleep, her head on his shoulder, her breathing soft and even. "She's beautiful," Mira said quietly. "Yes," Darius replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "She is. And you love her." It wasn't a question, but Darius answered anyway. "I think I do." "Is that crazy?" "I've known her for less than 2 days." Mira was quiet for a long moment, studying the sleeping alien woman who changed everything. "Sometimes the heart recognizes what the mind hasn't figured out yet," she said finally. "Just, be careful, Darius. We still don't know everything about her." Nexus Station hung in the void like a glittering jewel, its multiple rings rotating slowly around a central hub that housed everything from luxury hotels to black market dealers. It was a place where questions weren't asked and credits talked louder than laws, exactly what they needed. Jax had secured them quarters in the station's middle ring, away from the tourist areas but not so deep into the criminal sections as to attract unwanted attention. The accommodations were sparse but clean, 2 small bedrooms connected by a common area that served as both kitchen and meeting space. "I'll take the couch," Mira announced, dropping her gear bag beside the small sofa. "You don't have to," Darius began. "Yes, I do." Her brown eyes were firm. "You two need privacy to figure out your next move. And besides," she added with a rueful smile, "I think I've played the third wheel long enough." That evening, while Mira met with some of her contacts in station security, Darius and Zara found themselves alone for the first time since their escape. They sat together on the narrow balcony that looked out into the star field, sharing a bottle of Centaurian wine that Jax had procured from somewhere. "Tell me about Earth," Zara said, her head resting against his shoulder. "What's it like?" Darius thought about his home world, the blue skies he'd dreamed of flying through as a child, the mountains and oceans that had shaped his desire to soar above them. "It's beautiful. Not as exotic as your world, I'm sure, but there's something about the way the light hits the clouds at sunset. I always thought that's what inspired humans to want to fly." "My world doesn't have sunsets like that," Zara said softly. "Our star is a red giant, so everything is painted in shades of crimson and gold. The sky never turns blue like in your pictures." "What's it called?" "Your world." For a moment, she was quiet, and Darius wondered if he'd asked something too personal. Then she spoke, her voice barely audible above the station's ambient hum. "Nethra Prime. It's complicated." Before he could ask what she meant, she turned in his arms, her amber eyes searching his face. "Darius, there are things about me you don't know. Things that might change how you feel. Try me." Instead of answering, she kissed him. It was gentle at first, tentative, but when he responded, pulling her closer, she deepened the kiss with a passion that took his breath away. Her skin was warm against his hands, the silver markings seeming to glow faintly in the starlight. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Zara's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "What is it?" Darius asked, concern threading through his voice. "I can't tell you everything. Not yet. But I need you to know that what I feel for you, it's real. No matter what else happens, what you've given me, this feeling of being worth saving, that's real." They made love that night with a desperate tenderness, as if they both sensed that their time together might be limited. Darius marveled at the way her silver markings seemed to respond to her emotions, pulsing brighter as passion overtook them both. Her touch was electric, literally, tiny sparks of bioelectric energy that made every caress feel charged with meaning. Afterward, as they lay tangled together in the narrow bed, Zara traced patterns on his chest with her fingertip. "In my culture," she said softly, "when someone saves your life, you become bonded to them. Not legally, but spiritually. Your life becomes part of theirs." "I like the sound of that," Darius murmured, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "Even if it means sharing whatever dangers I face. Especially then." 3 days into their stay on Nexus Station, everything changed again. Darius was in the market district, purchasing supplies for their continued journey, when he noticed the woman following him. She moved with the same fluid grace as Zara, her skin a deeper shade of violet marked with silver patterns that seemed almost identical to Zara's. When their eyes met across the crowded marketplace, he saw the same amber gaze that had haunted his dreams. She approached him directly, her expression serious. "You are Darius Kane." "Who's asking?" "My name is Naya Starweaver. I am Zara's sister." The revelation hit him like a physical blow. Sister. Zara had never mentioned having family, never talked about anyone she'd left behind. "I need to speak with her," Naya continued. "Privately. There are things she must know, things that affect both our peoples." When they returned to the quarters, Zara's reaction to seeing her sister was immediate and emotional. The two women embraced tightly, speaking rapidly in their native language, their silver markings pulsing in synchronization. "I thought you were dead," Zara said finally, switching back to standard. "When the rebellion started." "I escaped," Naya replied. "But barely." "Zara, you have to come home. The Empress is dying, and the succession." "No." Zara's voice was firm. "I renounced all claim to the throne when I entered intelligence service. I have no interest in politics." Darius felt the world tilt around him. Throne? Empress? He looked between the two sisters, seeing the resemblance now, not just physical, but in the way they carried themselves, the unconscious authority in their bearing. "Zara," he said quietly, "what is she talking about?" Zara's amber eyes were full of pain as she met his gaze. "I'm sorry, Darius. I should have told you sooner. My full name is Zara Nethes, Zara Nethes of the House of Stars. I'm third in line for the throne of the Xantharian Empire." "Third in line," Naya corrected grimly. "Our brother Kale is now heir apparent, and he's agreed to the arranged marriage that will cement the peace treaty with the outer colonies. A marriage that was originally meant for you, sister." The silence that followed was deafening. Darius felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath his feet. An arranged marriage. Royal obligations. An entire empire's worth of responsibility. "I won't go back," Zara said firmly. "I've found something here worth more than any crown." "And what about your people?" Naya asked. "What about the millions who will suffer if the succession crisis tears the empire apart?" Zara's hand found Darius's, her fingers intertwining with his as they had during their escape. "Some choices are worth making, regardless of the cost." But even as she said it, Darius could see the conflict in her eyes, duty warring with desire, responsibility battling love. He realized that their greatest test wasn't behind them. It was just beginning. That night, as they held each other in the darkness of their small room, both pretending to sleep, Darius stared at the ceiling and wondered if love could truly conquer the weight of crowns and the expectations of empires. Outside their window, the stars wheeled in their ancient patterns, indifferent to the struggles of those who loved beneath their light. But in the warm circle of Zara's arms, with her heartbeat steady against his chest and her silver markings casting faint patterns on the walls, Darius allowed himself to believe that some bonds were stronger than duty, some loves deeper than obligation. Time would tell if he was right. The morning would bring new challenges, new revelations, and choices that would reshape not just their lives but the fate of worlds. But for now, in this moment, they had each other. And sometimes, that was enough to make the universe seem full of infinite possibility.